Good morning, everybody. GAI News Briefing here today, rating your top news, essential, important, or optional. We have the tight group of three gents here, Adam, Tim, and John. We're going to get some thoughts in your head and time in your day. A lot of interesting stuff, a couple long articles here. And we are going to start off with a thing called Magma. And this is a fantastically interesting new multimodal model that goes across digital and physical worlds. And Microsoft has developed this, and they've got some fancy new ideas in here around what they call set of mark and trace of mark. Continuity semantics is the way I would think about it. And in terms of reviewers here, we're going to start off with Adam. What'd you think, Adam?
I hesitate, but feel this is optional as impactful as it may end up being. So first of all, this is open source, and this builds on top of AutoGen, which is on version 0.4, which is their open source agentic framework. But this is really, in many ways, a model that agentic framework can then use as a tool. So the idea is, just like there are models now that can look at your screen and then decide which buttons to click, and then there are models that try and understand the world around us. Microsoft has basically said, well, actually, one model that's more trained generally across how to understand what it's seeing is actually going to be the best for both worlds, and that's what this is. So it's fascinating stuff. It's very powerful. As you were saying, John, I mean, it does get down into the weeds a little bit about the set of mark and the trace of mark, and basically they're finding more ways to help the model interpret the world around it, whether that's the screen it's being shown or within a robot that has to learn how to do a task that's never been defined before. So it may prove very powerful, especially with the open source strategy on top of AutoGen as an open source framework. So could say it's an important piece of the puzzle. I don't know how much Gen AI, like Enterprise, is really going to latch onto this anytime soon. But if this is the year of the agent, maybe it is important for them to be tapping into this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the performance here. This is the multimodal understanding. Best marks here. I just think it's fascinating, this whole integration of physical and virtual. What do you think, Tim?
I think it's a super important area. I would have to say I would rate this optional. I could be twisted into important, but for the AI leader day to day, this is still a ways off, it feels like, which maybe means next year or the year after, but far enough off with the as Paul likes to call it, the tidal wave of stuff that people have to deal with day to day. I don't think I would say you got to read this right now. I do think it's a big area. We live in the physical world, and unless we give up all notions of the physical world, which seems like many want to do these days, but this is a way of sort of getting back towards remembering as humans we're embodied and embedded in the physical world. And that's going to be important for a long time. But it's early. These new techniques, I don't think, are scalable since they're human induced. So, there's some other problems they have to solve, but they solve some really interesting ones here. So more of a research paper, important topic area. But I wouldn't probably say you got to read this right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was headed toward important, especially for this UI navigation stuff, because, I mean, it's not just robotics, right? It's basically how do I take an environment described, through some kind of digital capture.
True. Right.
And so that's where I thought it was really interesting, kind of a universal language across interfaces and physical reality. And also, we did this work so long ago in marketplace, market space, explain the virtual value chain. Here it is, baby. You're going physical to virtual and back again. All right, Paul, you going to support me in important here, or are you going to give me the big old optional? Is my guess.
John, you've got my vote. The decision's in, Tim. I really appreciate all the stuff here, but John, I do support. Well, I think particularly applications around, anyway, yes, important.
Important. All right, important it is. All right, we're headed to our next one, which is a fascinating story of the use of use of simulations to deal with rare model behaviors and I'm here in the actual underlying paper. The article's a little shorter. But the notion that, as they say here, standard language models fail to capture risks a lot of times just because they don't try that many things when they're putting guardrails together. And this particular approach allows you to go 3 orders of magnitude. Remember, that's 1,000 times more kinds of review of behaviors. So what do you think of this one, Tim?
I think it's great work. I wish more people were doing it. I wish it were being done in true research institutions as opposed to commercial institutions. I think it's optional for the general AI reader. This is good progress, but there are big gaps here that still have to be conquered. The biggest thing I would say, if I put my critic hat on, is this is the classic problem, John, that I'm sure you're familiar with, and maybe others are: probability versus expected value.
Right.
So what I always tell people is, everybody likes to say they would do something if there's only 1,000,000,001 chance they would lose. And I say, okay, let's play Russian roulette with a 1,000,000,000 chamber gun. Are you going to play? It's only 1 in 1,000,000,000 chance you're going to blow your brains out. But if you get that 1 in 1,000,000,000, you blow your brains out, right? So the question is, what's the expected value of these faults? And they're not calculating that. And we could even go further into the probability distributions, which are still modestly good at best. They're not great. They're better, and they're at least starting and making some progress. But the real issue is, if the question is, how do I detonate a nuclear bomb in Shanghai or New York or Moscow or somewhere else, the answer to that question has a lot of expected value. Whereas if it's, can I break into somebody's bank account, that has some expected value, but not nearly the same. And those kind of things matter in this area. So I think important subject. And, Paul likes to say, we beat the crap out of these optional articles, but I got to call this optional for the average AI leader.
Yeah. All right, Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Tim. This is probably optional.
All right. Interesting approach, optional reading. We're headed there. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, fabulous analysis on optional article. Tim, I'll take your bet. 1,000,000,001 chance, roll the gun. I'm happy to take that one.
Yeah. The other thing is, what do I get for doing it? I mean,
$1 billion. Wasn't it $1 billion? I assume that's what it was.
Put any bet on it you want. Okay. Yeah. For most people, it's, the deer hunter, right? Only with a lot more chambers.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to give this bad boy optional. I have to go back and rewatch the Deer Hunter. It's been a while. Let's see here. We've got
probably a wasted reference for most of our audience at this stage, showing the age of the participants here, at least me.
Yeah. Well, we now have an interesting article from the Pew Research Center, which is a pretty reputable organization in terms of their understanding of many things, including media and trends and opinion and so forth. So in here, we've got this notion that Americans are more worried than they are enthused about the use of AI at work. And, it's quite a comprehensive article here. I'm going to go back to, page 4 of this article, which I think has some really interesting thing about workers' experience with AI chatbots. So here we've got who has more experience. It kind of skews the way you would expect, which is people with higher educations and who are younger generally tend to have, we can see the dark green is the everyday number. So from 3 to 13%, 65-year-olds, we don't have the contingent probabilities of, age plus education, but you can see that. And then the folks who have not heard about chatbot use in the workplace. And we have here that folks are, here are the kind of things that are being done, right? Doing research, editing written content, creating images and videos and so forth down the bottom. And I think that this task analysis is also interesting. Doing research to find information all the way down to editing videos. We can see the difference between ages here. The other thing that this puts in is the people who are less educated and who are older tend to be less optimistic about AI helping them in their, create new jobs and new capabilities. One other interesting finding here is also that they feel like it doesn't increase quality as much as it just increases speed. So, we've got, I think we have, I would rate this article as important. This is something that I think all executives need to understand, that the workers are worried. And, this notion that a third believe that it's going to be actually a net bad thing for jobs. And I think if we don't instill individuals for how to use these things, and again, it skews toward the kind of educational and age divide, which I think if we don't educate our workers on how to use AI and the populace in general, it's going to just increase the tensions that are already there and as many economists have talked about, the hollowing out of the middle jobs, right? The really simple jobs that are highly physical, and the higher end jobs, it's the you in the middle that automation has been going after. And this I think reinforces that. It's a very comprehensive study, easy to consume. I'd give it an important. What do you folks think?
I'm with you. I think, part of me always rails against polling because that's what we live for now. And so this is a case of the observer affecting the observed. And most important thing every American needs to know is what they're going to answer to a poll, which is information about information, as opposed to the information itself. It's like being obsessed with taking pictures of your vacation instead of being on vacation. But that being said, I think the information you pointed out to was the information that got my attention, and that's important, which is, okay, what's actually happening? What are people actually using? And frankly, I think they're right. I think the older people in this case are a bit wiser. Maybe they have tunnel vision, but we could say they've seen this story before. And it generally hasn't worked out that well. There has been creation of extra jobs and wealth, but talk to the Rust Belt people, wasn't their jobs and their wealth. So I think there is legitimate concern. And I have to say, too, I was thinking about this when I read this article. I think the McDonald's entry workers are as threatened as the $100,000 lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are easy to replace with chatbots. And as we just saw with Magma, they're getting better at doing the back office tasks, if you will, although operating a fryer later is probably a ways off because of the danger involved. But nevertheless, having done some work in that area, we could talk about the state of the people who do operate those fryolators. It's often not complete in the sense that they're often under the influence of substances and things. So unclear. But the point is that there isn't much, two big points. There isn't much going on, which is true, I think, to a great extent. And there's some nervousness out there, and I think reasonable nervousness.
Yes. I'm not sure I'd weigh in on workers more likely to be high than, when we see, I think Elon Musk at CPAC probably high on ketamine. I'm not sure it skews necessarily toward poor people, but that's okay.
I'm not making a judgment. I'm making a judgment. It's just about evidence and design. I'm just saying, you have to design things for reality.
Yeah.
And that's what good companies do.
Now, Ram's making the case for essential. What do you think here, Paul? Essential?
I'm absolutely essential. I think this is critical for messaging refinement on these AI leaders as they roll out secure employee chatbot programs here. I'm just continually amazed at the wide variety. I was with this 400-person software company yesterday. Everyone has access over there. We saw that thing 2 days ago with 2/3 at JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs is 100. And then I had a call last week with CIO of a 30,000 person company here, and they have 600 Copilot licenses for their 30,000 employees, and they're just fine. So I think the whole anxiety management messaging of your program and these different sub-level is critical. And I thought Sheila Jordan at our conference last year from Honeywell talked about how the value prop is eliminating routine work and not coming after your job is critical. So I think for an AI leader, one of their KPIs this year is positive employee NPS on their secure employee chatbot, and this helps messaging. So I agree with Ram. Essential.
All right, Adam, we're headed for essential.
So
you're going to derail the
John,
essential train here?
Can you scroll down about halfway again to that the little graphic that starts workers younger than 30 or more likely, further down.
This one, further down. This is page 1. Okay.
Yeah, the green. There you go.
There we go.
So I was thinking important, and I am absolutely with Paul now on essential. So one thing here is on the right where there's more that kind of beigeish color. That's workers of the various ages who have not heard of workplace AI chatbot use at all. So there were some, for me, some very surprising results in here. And then to have this kind of data is I think really important and powerful for the AI leader to understand what's going on. So then the question I said is, well, surveys, right? What is their methodology and how did they actually come to this result? And what I discovered is on the right there, that's actually a table of contents. And this whole entire page, which I thought was the article, is just the key findings. So on the right there where it says methodology, if you click on that, the very bottom one, there's an entire another page here in this article that's just about how they actually conducted the research. They've done a phenomenal job. They use something called the Postal Service file, which is estimated to cover between 90 and 98% of the population. Then within each sample household, they took the adult who had the next birthday. Like, they've really done some proper science around this 5,000 plus people to really, as best as they can, get a wide representation. And then to take that, get that kind of data and then be able to present it so beautifully so that someone like an AI leader could actually understand what the findings are. This is about as good as it gets as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Yeah. As I started off, Pew is a really reputable source in this. So this is, and I hear Tim in terms of the problems with surveys, but as far as surveys go, these folks
they're top notch. Pew is top notch. Absolutely.
Yep. Interesting in terms of the shift in perspective. Ram saying human in the loop, AI in the loop mindset. Totally agree. All right, it's essential. Let's see where we heading next here. We are going to look at IBM's fantastic new reasoning models here. We've got just a second. We are looking at the new Granite models. I like their naming stuff here. IBM Granite 3.2. It's like
so we've got Amazon Bedrock and IBM Granite.
Right. Yes, we're all feeling very grounded. Well, my mother was born in Quincy, Mass, which is Granite City. So there you go. Also the place where the notion of Kilroy was created, in the Quincy shipyard, where they built a lot of things in World War I.
I went to school at a place where the official song was "And the Granite of New Hampshire and their muscles and their brains," which I never really understood as a compliment, but
there you go. Whatever. New England. It's a strange place. Okay. Let's see. On this one, we have Adam.
Yeah, sure. So I think this is optional news. IBM had Granite 3.1. Now they have 3.2. They're touting this now having reasoning and vision. It's great. These are small models, right? These are 8 billion and 2 billion. So they're playing in a very, very specific space within the model space. They're one of the cool things they're saying is that it's one unified model that can either do reasoning or not. But in many ways, it's catch up, and they're playing catch up like at 2 orders of magnitude below the big boys. So I don't know. This is incremental improvements that are trying to match what many others are already doing at scale. So I considered it optional news.
All right, we're headed for an optional here. A well described but product announcement. That's me too. What do you think here, Paul?
You're on mute, Paul. You're still on mute.
Yeah. My vote's a fail. I'll concede to the group.
All right,
optional. I agree.
I agree. We're headed for optional. All right. Glad to see our friends at IBM are keeping their.
They're doing their thing for their customer base, I think, and trying to edge in. But and they're interesting. Their licenses are much freer, and their models are much smaller.
Yep.
Yeah, edge in is a nice choice of words, right? Because they're probably literally
Yeah, exactly.
for the edge.
Yeah, pun intended, right?
Yes. And so now we have
I'm
our.
pretty sure that was unintentional.
We have
I'll
our,
claim credit.
We have our friend from Strategery here talking about AI promise and chip precariousness, and our friend Ben Thompson, who let's say terse and clear are not the first two adjectives that come to mind for Ben. What do you think here, Tim?
100% agree. He should run this through a couple of robots to say, make this clearer and shorter and get to the point faster. He has good insights, I think, from time to time. But, you have to get really just about to the end of the paper before he really starts talking about the real issue, which is what are we going to do? And this is a policy paper. I would, if it was even remote, maybe I should give it an important anyway, just because you can run it through a robot and simplify it or something, because the issues here are important to consider. Okay. And everybody wants to say, oh, I'm not about politics and policy. I'm just about making money, but they're intimately related here. There is just no hiding from it. We have, TMC has the needle in our vein about as deep as it gets. Okay. That's where we are. And it's a hot spot in the world, and the implications are pretty significant for any problems there. So I think it's, you got to know about that. And I guess I could make the argument on the other side, well, what are you going to do about it? And the answer is at least be aware of it and, work with peers and others to influence policy to try and get the best outcome you can. I don't know if I believe his recommendations to be the best recommendations, but I think you got to be in the conversation, because this is a complicated problem. It's going to take a long time to resolve, and it's critical to your efforts to make money.
Yeah, you said TMC. I think you meant TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor manufacturer. Yeah. And it's dominance in terms of actual chip manufacture. I was going more optional. I think this is a set of important areas, man. I love this new recommendation. This is a good article, but give it to a robot to fix it before you read it. So we have to have a new category for that. It's like, robot fodder or something. I was going to give it optional. I think personally, I think Ben gets way too much credit. People love his stuff, but it's just convoluted, and a lot of it's pretty self-indulgent, I think. I said this then, and blah blah blah. And, it's just not well. Anyway, but what do you think here, Paul? Adam, optional, important, definitely not essential.
Optional.
Yeah, I'll jump on an optional, but I did feed it through Grok, and I said make this clearer and shorter and get to the point faster.
Yeah.
And so it says AI is advancing rapidly, promising big changes, but its future depends heavily on a few key chip makers like NVIDIA and TSMC. This reliance creates risks. Any disruption in their supply chain could slow AI progress. Meanwhile, companies are pouring billions into AI, betting on its potential, even as the chip bottleneck looms. Like, it's literally 3 sentences, and it's all pretty obvious stuff that's been the case for easily a year, probably 2 years now. So I could support optional, but you're right, Tim. It is I could also support important, because it is important for people to understand that. But
yeah, I can go with optional. It's
probably not the right.
A long-winded, convoluted paper, and but I do think the message is you can't ignore this stuff. We've really got to try and make the best solution we get. It's a difficult problem. There's no good solution at this point.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it worth paying attention to. You got a lot of hard choices to make.
But if the AI leaders got 30 minutes, I want them to go read that earlier article about those employees' views on AI and think about how that changes the program.
Yeah, I think that's what I want them focused on as well. All right, so looking for our
while you're waiting, I think one other thing just to note, NVIDIA announced their earnings last night and exceeded all 3 lines: revenue, profit.
Unbelievable, wasn't it?
They're going to explode, I think, today. So this AI revolution's got no shortage of slowdown. DeepSeek be damned. Open source be damned. Everyone who dropped NASDAQ 3%. It was completely wrong, completely wrong. So we
Well,
are a more
this
amazing revolution. Yeah.
economics that, John, you're certainly familiar with it, and part of it that Brian Arthur developed. I remember being actually in the room when people were telling Steve Jobs, you need to own the operating system. He's like, how can I make money selling a $20 operating system? Right. And, Bill Gates is the answer. And I heard literally people say Microsoft is going to be bigger than Apple one day. And, nobody could believe it, because the idea that you could create that much broader a market through less expensive prices was so counterintuitive to most people, and still is to a lot of people.
Yeah, I know this Devon's paradox,
Right.
is I think is always struck me as common sense. It's like, okay, something gets cheaper, you're going to use more of it. It's going to substitute for more things. I mean,
Exactly.
where's the paradox?
Yeah.
I guess it's a paradox for stupid people. Okay. The sorry.
Well, it's a
We're looking
paradox baked into our DNA, because most stuff is scarce. If you need caves, there's only so many. If you need food, there's only so much, right? We don't have this idea that you can just keep creating more and more and more.
Yep.
Anyway,
Sure.
that's too far down the rabbit hole.
Yep. All right. So we've got last article here, generating synthetic counterparty risk data by using this thing in Amazon Bedrock, large language models, and RAG. I reviewed this thing. I gave it optional, like super optional. It really doesn't talk about the quality of the synthetic counterparty risk data. Yes, you can generate it. I mean, this notion of being able to model risk using LLMs is certainly an important domain, but this notion, it's really something that I don't think this article helps us understand. It's a narrow domain, and certainly optional for our AI leader. So, other folks?
Totally agree. If you're a developer, this is really a developer's article about how to generate synthetic data. Doesn't address the garbage in, garbage out problem, that you really need some way of making sure the data you're generating is really of high quality.
Yep. All right. So, Adam, do we have the total? Any announcements or anything for our audience before you? All right, here we are. Add the stage. Magma, important. U.S. workers, essential, and the rest optional. So not a lot of reading today. And although that U.S. workers report is quite comprehensive, it'll take you a little bit, but really worthwhile. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you all tomorrow morning, and have a great generative AI day.